The great crystal halls of Nexus Prime had not seen an emergency meeting like this in 3,000 years. 7 ancient races sat around the massive oval table, their representatives looking worried and uncomfortable. The air hummed with tension as holographic displays showed data that made even the oldest beings in the galaxy feel uneasy. Chancellor Vex Thera of the Velkari race tapped her long silver fingers on the table. Her people had mastered the secrets of life itself 50,000 years ago. They could grow organs like plants and heal any disease. But now, she stared at reports that made her stomach turn. The humans have done it again, she said, her voice sharp. They have created medicines that work better than ours. In just 20 years, they found cures for 3 plagues that we struggled with for centuries. Across the table, Prime Engineer Kalen Rex of the Threnody shook his massive head. His people were the builders of the galaxy. They moved stars and built highways through space itself. The Threnody had spent millions of years perfecting their craft. It is worse than that, he rumbled, his deep voice making the crystal walls vibrate. The humans have built new faster-than-light engines. Their ships can now travel distances in days that take our vessels months. Our greatest achievements look like toys compared to what they built in their garages. The other representatives shifted nervously. Each had similar stories to tell. The Zephyrian hive minds, who could think with 1 billion connected brains, reported that human computer systems were solving problems faster than their collective intelligence. The hegemony's greatest scholars, the Arxani, admitted that human students were surpassing their professors in subjects that took normal species decades to understand. How long have they been part of our galactic community? Asked Elder Symposium 9 of the Arxani, her 3 eyes blinking in different patterns as she accessed ancient records. 212 years, replied the Velkari Chancellor. Just over 2 centuries since we welcomed them as a junior member species. 2 centuries, repeated Prime Engineer Kalen Rex slowly. In 2 centuries, they have advanced further than most species do in 20,000 years. At this rate, they will surpass us all within another century. The 7th member of the council, Speaker Yith Hollow of the mysterious Umbrals, had been silent until now. The shadow-like being rarely spoke, but when it did, others listened. The humans do not follow the natural order, it whispered, its voice like wind through dead leaves. They change too fast. They adapt too quickly. They threaten the balance we have maintained for 1,000,000 years. Around the table, heads nodded in agreement. The galactic hegemony had kept peace for countless ages by maintaining a careful balance. The older races guided and controlled the younger ones. Technology advanced slowly and steadily. No single species gained too much power too quickly. It was a system that had worked for so long that many considered it a law of nature itself. But humans broke that law simply by existing. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the center of the Great Hall, representing humanity before the 7 elder races. She was young by galactic standards, barely 50 years old with gray streaking through her black hair. She had come to Nexus Prime thinking this was a routine diplomatic meeting. Now, as she listened to the concerns being raised about her species, she began to understand that this was something much more serious. The human problem, as Chancellor Vex Thera called it, was simple to explain but impossible to solve. Humans learned too fast. They adapted too quickly. They took technologies that other races had spent millennia perfecting and improved them in mere years. Worse, they seemed to do it without even trying. It was just their nature. We have watched your species with great interest, Elder Symposium 9 explained to Ambassador Chen. Your people show remarkable creativity and determination, but that same creativity threatens the stability our civilization has enjoyed for ages, beyond counting. Ambassador Chen listened carefully as each representative spoke. The Velkari worried that human medical advances would make their healing arts obsolete. The Threnody feared that human engineering would replace their ancient construction methods. The Zephyrians were concerned that human artificial intelligence would surpass their collective consciousness. Each race had spent tens of thousands of years becoming the best at what they did. Now humans were proving that all of that could be matched or beaten in just a few decades. What exactly are you asking of us? Ambassador Chen finally said when the complaints had finished. The 7 representatives looked at each other. They had already discussed this privately and reached a decision. Now came the hard part, presenting it to humanity. Chancellor Vex Thera stood up, her tall form casting shadows across the crystal table. We are offering your species a choice, she said formally. You may remain part of the galactic hegemony under new conditions. We will provide you with safe worlds to live on and trade agreements that benefit everyone. But you must accept certain limits. What kind of limits? Ambassador Chen asked, though she was already beginning to guess. Limits on your technological research, Prime Engineer Kalen Rex explained. No more than a 5% improvement in any technology per decade. Limits on your population growth. No more than a 2% increase per year. Limits on your expansion into space. No more than one new colony world per century. The conditions went on and on. Humans would be allowed to exist, but only if they agreed to stop being human. They would have to give up their curiosity, their drive to explore and create and improve. They would have to become like every other species in the galaxy, slow, steady, and predictable. And if we refuse these conditions? Ambassador Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. Then you must leave, Speaker Yithala whispered, peacefully and quietly. We will not wage war against you. We will not hunt you down or destroy your worlds. But you cannot remain in hegemony space if you will not accept our terms. The Great Hall fell silent. The 7 elder races waited for humanity's response. They had made their offer as generous as possible. Humans could stay if they agreed to limit themselves. If not, they could leave with no hard feelings. No one would be hurt. No one would be angry. It was the most civilized solution possible to an impossible problem. Ambassador Chen stood in the center of the hall, feeling the weight of her entire species' future on her shoulders. Around her, beings that had ruled the galaxy for longer than humans had existed waited for her answer. She thought about Earth, about the billions of humans living on dozens of worlds across hegemony space. She thought about the children in human schools who dreamed of becoming scientists and engineers and explorers. I cannot make this decision alone, she said finally. I must return to my people and discuss this with our governments. How long do we have to decide? 1 standard year, Chancellor Vexthera replied. Surely that is enough time for your people to make their choice. As Ambassador Chen left the crystal halls of Nexus Prime, she carried with her the most important decision in human history. Behind her, the 7 elder races were already discussing how to manage the transition. Most of them believed humans would choose to stay and accept the limits. After all, what species would willingly give up the safety and prosperity of galactic civilization? They were about to find out just how little they understood about humanity. The hegemony had made their offer in good faith, believing it was generous and fair. They had given humans a choice: accept limits and stay, or leave quietly without conflict. It seemed like a reasonable compromise to beings who had spent millions of years avoiding change. But they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that humans valued safety and comfort more than freedom and growth. They had assumed that when faced with the choice between limits and exile, humans would choose the easy path. They were wrong. In 1 year, they would discover just how wrong they were. And though they did not know it yet, that discovery would change the galaxy forever. The meeting ended with formal politeness and diplomatic courtesy. The elder races were satisfied that they had handled a difficult situation with wisdom and restraint. Humanity had been given a fair choice. Whatever they decided, it would be their own free will. As the great crystal halls of Nexus Prime emptied, none of the 7 elder races imagined that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They had assumed that forcing humans to choose between comfort and freedom would be a simple decision. They had no idea that for humans, it was no choice at all. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the Galactic Assembly 1 year later, but everything had changed. The great amphitheater held representatives from thousands of species, all watching as she prepared to deliver humanity's answer. Her hair had gone completely gray during the past 12 months, and new lines marked her face. The decision had not been easy. Honorable representatives of the galactic hegemony, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. My people have considered your generous offer carefully. We have debated in our parliaments, discussed in our schools, and argued in our homes. Every human settlement, every colony world, every space station has participated in this decision. Chancellor Vexthera leaned forward in her seat. The Velkari leader was confident she knew what was coming. Surely humans would choose the sensible path. They would accept the limits and remain part of galactic civilization. The alternative was unthinkable. After much consideration, Ambassador Chen continued, humanity chooses to leave. The amphitheater erupted in surprised murmurs. In the gallery reserved for the elder races, expressions of shock and confusion appeared on alien faces. This was not what they had expected. You choose exile? Prime Engineer Kalen Rex asked. his deep voice booming across the assembly. You would give up all of this? He gestured to the magnificent structure around them, to the representatives of thousands of advanced civilizations, to the greatest gathering of intelligence and technology in the galaxy. We choose freedom. Ambassador Chen replied simply. Humanity thanks the hegemony for 2 centuries of friendship and cooperation. We hold no anger toward any of you. You have made your choice to preserve stability and order. We have made ours to preserve our nature and our future. Elder Symposium 9 of the Arksani activated her translation matrix, speaking in the formal language of galactic law. Let the record show that humanity has freely chosen to depart from hegemony space. No pressure was applied. No threats were made. This is their voluntary decision. Confirmed, Ambassador Chen said. We ask only for safe passage to remove our people and possessions from hegemony territory. We estimate this will take 18 standard months. What followed was perhaps the most civilized mass migration in galactic history. The hegemony, relieved that humans had chosen to leave peacefully, offered every assistance. Velkari bioships helped evacuate human colonies. Threnodi engineers provided massive cargo vessels for moving equipment and supplies. Even the mysterious Umbrals offered their shadow ships to help transport humans who preferred to travel in darkness. The evacuation began immediately. From Earth, humanity's ancient homeworld, massive generation ships launched every day. Each one carried millions of people and everything they could take with them. Entire cities were dismantled and packed into the cargo holds of ships designed for journeys that might last centuries. From the human colonies scattered across hegemony space came smaller ships, but no less important. Research stations, manufacturing plants, universities, and hospitals were all loaded onto vessels and prepared for the long journey into the unknown. Human families packed their lives into suitcases and storage containers, saying goodbye to worlds they had called home for generations. The most remarkable thing about the Exodus was how organized it was. Humans had spent the year not just debating whether to leave, but planning how to do it if they chose exile. They had designed new ships specifically for the evacuation. They had mapped routes to star systems beyond hegemony space. They had even established which groups would settle which regions, to avoid conflicts over resources. They are more prepared than we expected, Chancellor Vexthera confided to her fellow representatives as they watched the evacuation proceed. It is almost as if they knew they would choose to leave before we even made the offer. Perhaps they did, replied Elder Symposium 9 thoughtfully. Perhaps they understood their own nature better than we understood it. The human ships were unlike anything the elder races had seen before. Instead of following established designs that had been used for thousands of years, humans had created vessels that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. Their generation ships were not just transport vessels but mobile cities, complete with factories, farms, and research laboratories. Their exploration ships carried equipment for building new colonies from raw materials. Their cargo ships could carry loads that should have required dozens of traditional vessels. How did they build so many ships so quickly? Prime Engineer Kalan Rex wondered as he watched the endless stream of human vessels leaving hegemony space. Some of these designs are completely new. They should have taken decades to develop and test. The answer, though none of the elder races realized it at the time, was simple. Humans had not spent the year building ships. They had spent it designing them, then using their revolutionary manufacturing techniques to build them in months instead of years. The same creativity and adaptability that had worried the hegemony was now being used to execute the largest migration in galactic history. As the evacuation continued, something unexpected began to happen. Some non-human species asked to join the Exodus. A group of young Threnodi engineers fascinated by human ship designs requested permission to travel with the human fleets. Several Zephyrian subminds, curious about human individualism, chose to leave their collective and join human colonies. Even a few Velkari scientists, intrigued by human medical research, decided to abandon their homeworlds and seek new opportunities with humanity. This is concerning, Speaker Yithala whispered during an emergency session of the elder races. We expected humans to leave. We did not expect them to take some of our own people with them. But the hegemony's laws were clear. Any being had the right to choose their own path. If some aliens wanted to join the human exodus, they could not be stopped. The elder races watched nervously as their best and brightest young minds packed their belongings and headed for human ships. The humans welcomed them all. This surprised many observers who had expected humans to be bitter about their forced exile. Instead, they seemed genuinely happy to share their journey with anyone who wanted to come along. Ambassador Chen explained it in one of her final addresses to the Galactic Assembly. Humanity has always believed that diversity makes us stronger, she said. If others wish to join our journey, they are welcome. We will build something new together, something that has never existed before in this galaxy. 18 months after the decision was announced, the last human ship left hegemony space. Ambassador Chen's own vessel, a sleek diplomatic cruiser, was among the final departures. As it crossed the boundary into the empty space beyond the galactic rim, she sent a final message to the hegemony. "We thank you for the gift of exile," the message said. "You have given us something we never had while we remained within your borders. Complete freedom to become whatever we can become. We hold no anger, only gratitude. Perhaps someday, when we have built something worthy of your attention, we will meet again as equals." The transmission ended, and Ambassador Chen's ship disappeared into the vast darkness beyond the edge of galactic civilization. Behind them, the hegemony settled back into its ancient routines. The elder races congratulated themselves on handling a difficult situation with wisdom and restraint. They had avoided war, prevented chaos, and maintained their careful balance of power. "Well," Chancellor Vexthera said as the Council of Elder Races held its final meeting on the human question, "that was unpleasant, but necessary. Order is restored. Our civilization can continue its proper development without disruption." The other representatives agreed. The Threnodi returned to their massive construction projects. The Zephyrians expanded their collective consciousness. The Velkari continued their biological research. The Arxani resumed their scholarly pursuits. Life in the hegemony went on as it had for millions of years. None of them imagined that they had just made the most catastrophic mistake in galactic history. None of them suspected that by forcing humanity to leave, they had removed the only limitation on human development that had ever existed. None of them realized that they had just given the most creative and adaptable species in the galaxy complete freedom to evolve without restraint. The elder races had solved their human problem by making it disappear. They had no idea that they had not eliminated the problem at all. They had simply moved it beyond their sight, where it would grow and develop in ways they could never imagine. In the empty space beyond the galactic rim, millions of human ships spread out across hundreds of star systems, free from the restrictions of hegemony law, free from the need to maintain stability, free from the careful balance that had kept galactic civilization unchanged for eons. Humanity began to do what it did best. They began to change everything. Behind them, the hegemony celebrated its restored peace and order. The elder races returned to their ancient ways, confident that they had preserved their civilization. For another million years, they had no idea that they had just started a countdown to their own obsolescence, the way galaxy was about to discover what humanity could accomplish when nobody was telling them what they could not do. 50 years had passed since the last human ship disappeared beyond the galactic rim. The hegemony had settled into its comfortable old patterns, and life continued as it had for countless ages. The crystal halls of Nexus Prime hosted trade negotiations and cultural exchanges. The great universities of the Arxani welcomed new students. The Threnodi worked on engineering projects that would take centuries to complete. Everything was as it should be, but something felt wrong. Chancellor Dex Mora, the newest leader of the Velkari, reviewed the latest scientific reports with growing confusion. Her people had always been the masters of biological science. For 50,000 years, they had led the galaxy in medical research, but now their progress seemed painfully slow. "How long since our last major breakthrough?" she asked her chief researcher, Sub-Chancellor Tevana. 43 years, Chancellor," came the reluctant reply. "We successfully created a treatment for Andromedan bone rot. Before that, it was 37 years for the neural plague cure. And before the humans left?" Sub-Chancellor Tevana checked his records, though he already knew the answer. "We were producing major breakthroughs every 3 to 5 years. Sometimes more often." Chancellor Dex Mora frowned. This made no sense. The Velkari had not become less intelligent. Their research facilities were better than ever. They had more scientists working on more projects than at any time in their history. Yet somehow their rate of discovery had slowed to a crawl. The same problem existed across the galaxy. The Threnodi, master builders for millions of years, found their engineering projects taking longer and longer to complete. Designs that should have been revolutionary turned out to be only slight improvements on ancient techniques. The Zephyrians, with their collective consciousness that could think with billions of minds, were solving problems more slowly than before. Even the Arksani scholars, the greatest academics in galactic history, were having trouble making new discoveries. It is as if the galaxy has become boring, Elder Prime Thought admitted during a gathering of Arksani leaders. Our students learn everything we can teach them, but they rarely think of anything we have not already thought of ourselves. The truth was uncomfortable, but undeniable. For millions of years, the elder races had prided themselves on their wisdom and intelligence. They had believed that their slow, steady progress was the natural order of things. But now they were beginning to realize that much of their recent advancement had come from a different source entirely: competition. For 2 centuries, humans had been pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Every human breakthrough had forced the elder races to work harder, think faster, and reach further than they had in ages. The Velkari had developed new medicines because they were trying to keep up with human doctors. The Threnodi had improved their engineering because human builders were creating things that seemed impossible. The Zephyrians had enhanced their collective thinking because human computers were solving problems faster than their hive minds could. Without humans to compete with, the elder races had returned to their natural pace, glacially slow and utterly predictable. But there were other changes too, ones that worried the hegemony leadership even more than their slowing progress. Reports from deep space exploration fleets had become increasingly strange. Long-range sensors were detecting energy signatures that made no sense. Massive structures appeared on telescopic images, then vanished before follow-up observations could be made. Radio signals in unknown frequencies bounced around the galaxy's edge like echoes from an impossible source. The sensors must be malfunctioning, insisted Fleet Commander Zex Hollow of the Umbrals during a military briefing. These readings are not possible. No known technology could create energy signatures this powerful. All sensors malfunction in exactly the same way? Asked General Korth Prime of the Threnodi. Every ship, every station, every deep space probe reports the same impossible readings from the same region of space. The region in question was beyond the galactic rim, in the direction where humanity had vanished 50 years earlier. The implications were obvious, but nobody wanted to say them out loud. It was easier to blame equipment failures than to consider what these readings might really mean. Dr. Vel Chorus, the hegemony's chief scientist, studied the data with growing alarm. The energy signatures were not random. They showed patterns that suggested massive industrial activity. Construction on a scale that dwarfed anything the elder races had ever attempted. Worse, the signatures were getting stronger and more complex each year. If these readings are accurate, she reported to the Hegemony Council, then someone is building structures that are larger than our biggest space stations. Possibly larger than our planets. Impossible, declared Chancellor Dex Mora. No one has that kind of technology. No one has that kind of power. But the evidence kept mounting. Automated probes sent toward the galactic rim reported detecting artificial gravity fields strong enough to hold together moon-sized objects. Spectroscopic analysis showed materials that should not exist according to known physics. Radio telescopes picked up transmission patterns that suggested communication networks spanning dozens of star systems. Then the probes started disappearing. Not destroyed. Just gone. One moment they were transmitting data from the edge of known space, and the next moment their signals simply stopped. Recovery missions found nothing. No debris, no energy signatures, no trace that the probes had ever existed. Equipment failure, the official report stated. Mechanical breakdown due to the harsh conditions at the galactic rim. But privately, the hegemony's leaders were beginning to suspect something much more disturbing. The probes were not failing. They were being intercepted. The first confirmed contact came from an unexpected source. A Threnodi merchant ship, the Eternal Commerce, had been following a trade route near the galactic rim when their navigation system malfunctioned. Instead of arriving at their destination, they found themselves in a star system that did not appear on any map. The system contained 7 stars, each one surrounded by massive artificial structures. The structures were clearly artificial, but their design was unlike anything in hegemony records. They were beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, combining curves and angles that seemed to bend space itself. Energy flowed between them in patterns that created light shows visible from millions of kilometers away. Captain Rel Thane of the Eternal Commerce tried to contact the structures, broadcasting on every known frequency. For 3 days there was no response. Then on the 4th day a voice answered. "Welcome, friends," the voice said in perfect Threnodi. "We wondered when you would come looking." The voice was human. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the Eternal Commerce's main screen, but she looked different than she had 50 years ago. She was still recognizably human, but there was something in her eyes that spoke of experiences beyond anything the hegemony could imagine. Behind her, through vast windows, Captain Relthane could see structures that seemed to stretch to infinity. Admiral Chen, Captain Relthane managed to stammer. But you are supposed to be. How is this possible? We have been busy, Admiral Chen replied with a smile that held secrets. Would you like to see what we have built? The tour that followed broke Captain Relthane's understanding of what was possible. The structures around the seven stars were not just buildings or space stations. They were Dyson spheres, massive shells that completely enclosed each star and captured every photon of energy it produced. The power output of a single one of these constructions was greater than the total energy consumption of the entire hegemony. But that was just the beginning. Between the stars, Captain Relthane saw space elevators that stretched for light years, orbital habitats that housed populations in the billions, manufacturing facilities that could build ships the size of moons, agricultural platforms that could feed entire civilizations, transportation networks that moved people and goods faster than the fastest hegemony ships could travel. How, was all Captain Relthane could ask. Freedom, Admiral Chen replied simply. For 50 years we have been free to become whatever we could become. No limits, no restrictions, no one to tell us that something was impossible or dangerous or too ambitious. During the tour, Captain Relthane met some of the non-human species that had joined the human exodus 50 years earlier. The young Threnody engineers had become master builders of impossible structures. The Zephyrian subminds had developed new forms of consciousness that spanned star systems. The Velkari scientists had created new forms of life that existed in the vacuum of space itself. But how many of you are there? Captain Relthane asked. Surely you cannot have enough people to build all of this. Admiral Chen's smile grew wider. We are not the only ones who chose freedom over comfort, she said. The galaxy is full of species who were tired of moving slowly and thinking small. We found them. They found us. We built something together that none of us could have built alone. It was true. In 50 years of exploration beyond the galactic rim, humanity had encountered dozens of intelligent species that had never been contacted by the hegemony. Some were primitives who were just discovering fire. Others were advanced civilizations that had been isolated by distance or choice. All of them shared one thing in common. They were willing to change, to grow, to be. The emergency session of the Hegemony Council convened within hours of Captain Relthane's return. The crystal halls of Nexus Prime, which had hosted calm discussions for millions of years, now buzzed with panic and confusion. 7 elder races sat around their ancient table, staring at data that challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe. These readings cannot be accurate, Chancellor Dexmora insisted, her silver fingers trembling as she gestured at the holographic displays. No civilization could advance this far in 50 years. It is physically impossible, but the evidence was overwhelming. Captain Relthane's ship had recorded everything during his accidental journey to human space. Energy signatures that dwarfed the output of entire star systems, structures that bent space and time, technologies that made the hegemony's greatest achievements look like cave paintings. Prime Engineer Yax Colon of the Threnody studied the architectural scans with growing amazement and horror. These Dyson spheres, he said slowly, they are not just energy collectors. They are computers. Each one has processing power greater than our entire galactic communication network. And there are dozens of them, added Elder Continuum 7 of the Arxani. If these readings are correct, the humans have access to computational resources that exceed our capacity by factors we cannot even calculate. The most disturbing revelation came from the biological scans. Dr. Vel Koris, the hegemony's chief scientist, had spent 3 sleepless days analyzing the data. What she found challenged the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. They are not just humans anymore, she reported to the stunned council. The biological readings show massive genetic modifications. Enhanced intelligence, extended lifespans, adaptation to environments that would kill unmodified humans. Some of them appear to be living in the vacuum of space itself. Impossible, breathed Chancellor Dexmora. The Velkari are the masters of biological science. If such modifications were possible, we would have developed them. That is just it, Dr. Velkoris replied grimly. We did develop them. The humans took our techniques and improved them beyond recognition. They did in 50 years what would have taken us 50,000. But the worst news was yet to come. Intelligence reports from across the hegemony told the same story. Human ships were appearing at the edges of known space. Not as invaders, but as traders. They offered technologies that seemed like magic to hegemony species, medicine that could cure any disease, energy sources that never ran out, transportation systems that could move entire populations across galactic distances in days. The prices they asked were not money or resources. They wanted volunteers, beings who were willing to leave their old lives behind and join something called the Human Cooperative. Young members of every hegemony species were signing up by the millions. "They are stealing our people," Speaker Yithalo whispered, its shadow form writhing with distress. "Our best and brightest are abandoning their homeworlds to join the humans." "They are not stealing anyone," corrected General Korth Prime of the Threnodi. "They are offering opportunities that we cannot match. Our young people are choosing to leave because the humans can give them futures we cannot provide." The exodus was accelerating. Entire university classes were graduating and immediately departing for human space. Research teams were abandoning projects that would take decades to complete in favor of human laboratories, where the same work could be finished in months. Artists and engineers and scientists were leaving the hegemony in unprecedented numbers. But perhaps the most shocking defection came from an unexpected source. Elder Supreme Mind of the Zephyrians, the oldest and most respected member of the Hive consciousness, announced that she was disconnecting from the collective to join the humans. "For a million years, I have been part of something greater than myself," she explained in her farewell message. "But the cooperative offers something even greater, the chance to become more than we ever dreamed possible. The humans have shown us that consciousness itself can evolve, can grow beyond any limits we imagined." When Elder Supreme Mind departed, she took with her nearly a quarter of the Zephyrian collective. Entire Hive ships simply vanished from hegemony space, their crews choosing individual consciousness over the safety of the collective mind. The pattern repeated across every member species. The Velkari lost their most brilliant biologists. The Threnodi watched their master engineers depart for human construction projects. The Arxani saw their greatest scholars abandon ancient libraries for human universities. Even the mysterious Umbrals, who had rarely interacted with other species, began sending representatives to negotiate with human diplomats. "We must do something," Chancellor Dexmora declared during an emergency session. "At this rate, we will lose half our population within a generation." "What can we do?" replied Prime Engineer Yax Colon. "We cannot force people to stay. We cannot match what the humans are offering. We cannot even understand half of their technologies." The answer came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Vel Chen, one of the few humans who had remained in hegemony space, requested permission to address the council. She was the daughter of the famous Sarah Chen, but unlike her mother, she had chosen to stay behind when humanity departed 50 years earlier. "Honorable representatives," she began, her voice calm and measured, "I bring an offer from the Human Cooperative. They have not forgotten their origins in this galaxy. They wish to extend an invitation to rejoin galactic civilization under new terms." The council chamber fell silent. After 50 years of separation, humanity was offering to come home. But as Ambassador Velchen outlined the terms, it became clear that this was not the reunion the elder races had hoped for. "The cooperative invites all hegemony species to join as equal partners," she explained. "There would be no senior or junior members, no restrictions on technological development, no limits on growth or expansion. Every species would contribute their strengths and benefit from the strengths of others." "And what would be humanity's role in this new arrangement?" asked Chancellor Dexmora carefully. "The same as everyone else's," Ambassador Velchen replied. "Partners, not rulers. The cooperative is not an empire. It is exactly what the name suggests, a voluntary association of species working together for mutual benefit. But the details made it clear who would really be in charge. Human technology would power the new civilization. Human ships would provide transportation. Human factories would produce the goods that everyone needed. The elder races would be welcome to join, but they would be joining something that humanity had built without them. "You are asking us to abandon everything we have built over millions of years," Speaker Yithalo pointed out. "No," Ambassador Velchen corrected gently. "We are asking you to build something better. The hegemony served its purpose, but that purpose is finished. The galaxy has outgrown the need for careful limits and artificial stability. It is time for something new." The offer was generous, perhaps more generous than the elder races deserved. Humanity held no grudges about their forced exile. They understood that the hegemony had acted out of fear, not malice. But they also made it clear that the old ways were finished. The galaxy had moved beyond the boundaries that the elder races had set for it. "We will need time to consider this offer," Chancellor Dexmora said finally. "Of course," Ambassador Velchen replied. "But please understand that the offer will not remain open indefinitely. The cooperative is expanding rapidly. New species are joining every day. If the hegemony chooses to remain separate, that is your right. But you will be choosing to remain in the past while the rest of the galaxy moves into the future." As Ambassador Velchen departed, the council chamber erupted in heated debate. Some representatives argued for immediate acceptance. Others demanded more time to study the implications. A few suggested that the hegemony should reject the offer entirely and try to compete with the cooperative using their own resources. But privately, every member of the council knew the truth. The choice had already been made 50 years ago when they forced humanity to leave. Everything that had happened since then was just the consequence of that decision. They had created their own replacement by trying to preserve their own dominance. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, not because they had conquered it, but because they had built something better than what came before. The elder races could join this new civilization as junior partners, or they could watch from the sidelines as the universe passed them by. For the first time in galactic history, the established powers were being offered a choice by their former subjects. The irony was not lost on anyone. 50 years earlier, the hegemony had given humanity a simple choice: accept limits or leave. Now humanity was offering the hegemony an equally simple choice: join the future or be left behind. The difference was that this time, everyone knew which choice led to survival and which led to irrelevance. The age of the elder races was ending. The age of the cooperative was beginning. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space beyond the galactic rim, Admiral Sarah Chen was preparing for humanity's triumphant return to the galaxy they had been forced to leave. But this time, they would return not as exiles seeking readmission, but as the Dom. The final emergency session of the Galactic Hegemony Council convened exactly 1 year after Ambassador Velchen had delivered humanity's offer. The crystal halls of Nexus Prime, which had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations for millions of years, now hosted what everyone knew would be their last meeting as the dominant power in the galaxy. The debate had raged for 12 months. Some species wanted to accept humanity's invitation and join the cooperative as equal partners. Others argued for maintaining independence and trying to compete with human technology. A few had suggested war, though that option had been quickly dismissed when intelligence reports revealed the true scope of human military capabilities. Chancellor Dexmora looked around the table at her fellow representatives. In the past year, 3 of the elder races had already announced their intention to join the cooperative. The Arxani scholars had been the first to break ranks, seduced by access to human libraries that contained the collected knowledge of hundreds of species. The Zephyrians had followed, their remaining collective consciousness eager to merge with human information networks. Most recently, a faction of the Threnodi had declared independence from the hegemony and requested admission to the cooperative. "The vote is before us," Chancellor Dexmora announced formally. "Shall the galactic hegemony accept humanity's invitation to join the cooperative, or shall we maintain our independence and compete with human civilization using our own resources?" The result was not surprising. After months of debate, economic analysis, and intelligence gathering, the reality was undeniable. The hegemony could not compete with the cooperative. Human technology was simply too advanced, their resources too vast, their growth too rapid. Trying to match them would be like trying to race a starship while riding on the back of an animal. The vote was unanimous. The hegemony would accept humanity's offer and join the cooperative. But even as the decision was announced, reports were arriving that made it clear the vote was largely symbolic. Across hegemony space, human ships were already providing aid to struggling colonies. Human medical teams were curing plagues that local doctors could not treat. Human engineers were upgrading infrastructure that had been considered state-of-the-art just months before. The integration was happening whether the hegemony officially approved it or not. Admiral Sarah Chen arrived at Nexus Prime 3 days later, aboard a ship that defied every assumption about space travel. The vessel, called New Horizons, was larger than most space stations, but moved with the grace of a fighter craft. Its hull seemed to bend light around it, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. When it docked with the ancient station, The entire structure vibrated with harmonics that suggested technologies beyond current understanding. Admiral Chen herself had changed even more dramatically than her ships. She was still recognizably human, but her eyes held depth that spoke of experiences spanning centuries. Her movements suggested enhanced reflexes and strength. Most disturbing of all, she seemed to know what people were thinking before they spoke. "Welcome to the cooperative," she said, as she addressed the assembled representatives for the first time in 50 years. "We are honored that you have chosen to join us in building the future." But her words carried undertones that made the elder races uncomfortable. This was not a reunion of equals. This was a powerful entity graciously accepting the surrender of former rivals. "What happens now?" asked Prime Engineer Yaxcolin of the Threnody, one of the few elder race leaders who had not already defected to the cooperative. "Now we work together," Admiral Chen replied simply. "Your species bring valuable perspectives and capabilities to our alliance. The Velkari understanding of biological systems, the Threnody expertise in large-scale construction, the Arksani tradition of scholarship. All of these will help the cooperative grow stronger. And what about our governments? Our cultures? Our independence?" Chancellor Dexmore asked. "Preserved and protected," Admiral Chen assured her. "The cooperative does not seek to destroy what came before. We seek to build upon it. Your governments will continue to rule your homeworlds as they always have. Your cultures will be celebrated and shared with other species. Your independence will be respected in all matters that do not affect the common good." But as the integration proceeded over the following months, it became clear that very few matters did not affect the common good. Human administrators appeared in every major government to provide consultation on policy decisions. Human technologies required human technicians to operate and maintain them. Human transportation networks needed human controllers to manage traffic. Human economic systems demanded human oversight to prevent disruption. The elder races found themselves in the position of junior partners in their own galaxy. Their opinions were solicited and sometimes followed, but the real decisions were made by human committees that operated with an efficiency and scope that left traditional governments struggling to keep up. "We have become a client state," Chancellor Dex Mora confided to her remaining cabinet members after her third meeting with human administrators. "They are polite about it, but we are no longer masters of our own destiny." The transformation was not malicious. The humans seemed genuinely committed to preserving the rights and dignity of other species. But their capabilities were so far beyond those of the elder races that equality was impossible. It was like trying to have an equal partnership between adults and children. The adults might be kind and respectful, but ultimately, they would make the important decisions. Worse, many members of the elder races preferred it that way. Human governance was more efficient than traditional systems. Human technology made life easier and more comfortable. Human medicine extended lifespans and eliminated suffering. Human education systems produced smarter, more capable individuals in a fraction of the time required by traditional methods. The younger generation of elder race citizens saw no reason to resist. They learned human languages, adopted human customs, and pursued careers in human-designed industries. They saw their parents' attachment to the old ways as nostalgia for an inferior past. "We are becoming extinct," Elder Prime thought of the Arksani observed during one of the last meetings of traditional scholars. "Not through violence or oppression, but through obsolescence. Our children see no value in preserving traditions that serve no practical purpose in the new galaxy." The final transformation came when Admiral Chen announced the next phase of cooperative expansion. Having integrated the major species of the local galaxy, humanity was preparing to make contact with civilizations in other galaxies. The technologies they had developed during their 50 years of exile made intergalactic travel not just possible, but routine. "The universe is vast," Admiral Chen explained to the assembled representatives of what had once been the hegemony. "This galaxy was just our starting point. There are millions of other galaxies, each containing billions of species with their own unique perspectives and capabilities. Imagine what we can accomplish when we bring them all together." The elder races listened with growing amazement and despair. 50 years ago, they had been the masters of their own galaxy. Now they were junior members of a civilization that was preparing to expand across the entire, observable universe. The scope of human ambition was beyond anything they had ever imagined. "What about us?" asked Speaker Yith Hollow, the last representative of the mysterious Umbrals. "What role do the elder races play in this grand vision?" Admiral Chen's answer was kind but devastating in its implications. "You are the foundation," she said. "Everything humanity has accomplished was built upon the knowledge and culture you shared with us during our 2 centuries in the hegemony. You taught us about galactic civilization, about cooperation between species, about the possibilities that exist when different forms of life work together. Without that foundation, we could never have built what we have built. But now," Chancellor Dexmora pressed. "Now you rest." Admiral Chen replied gently. "You have earned it. Your species have spent millions of years carrying the burden of galactic leadership. You maintained peace, preserved knowledge, and created a stable civilization that lasted longer than most stars. That is a remarkable achievement. But that phase of galactic history is over. It is time for others to carry the burden of progress." The message was clear, though it was delivered with diplomatic courtesy. The elder races had become living museums, preserved and honored for their historical contributions but no longer relevant to the galaxy's future. They would be cared for and protected, but they would not be consulted on decisions that shaped the course of civilization. Admiral Chen's final address to the former Hegemony Council was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Her words were translated into thousands of languages and heard by trillions of beings on millions of worlds. 50 years ago, you made a choice, she said, her voice carrying the weight of historical judgment. You were afraid of what humanity might become if we remained among you. You were concerned that our rapid advancement would disrupt the stability you had worked so hard to maintain. So you offered us a choice. Accept limits on our growth or leave your civilization and make our own way in the universe. She paused, letting the implications of those words sink in across the galaxy.